You've probably all heard by now, but if you haven't, it looks pretty likely that Russia is going to invade Ukraine. It's not certain. There is every chance that that won't happen, but there's certainly a lot of evidence that Vladimir Putin has had his eyes on Ukraine for a long time now. So, you know, is this actually going to happen? And what do we do about it, right? What does NATO do about it, if anything? And for those of you that don't know, NATO is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It's just basically like a group of Western countries, the most powerful of which are like the US and the UK. And it's basically there to try and sort of maintain sort of Western ideas of peace and liberal democracy and stuff. And it's been a force of tremendous harm to the world at points, and arguably a force for good in others. But yeah, that's what NATO is. The British government appears to reckon that this is going to happen. Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary, seem very concerned about this. He said that he believes it could be as early as within the next 48 hours, and that's when I'm recording this video. So when it comes out, it'll probably be even less than that. Wednesday the 16th is the day that he's talking about. That's kind of, you know, as early as it might actually be. It might be the 16th when the invasion begins. The US obviously has been saying that they think that it's going to happen. There's, you know, about 130,000 troops amassed on the border between Ukraine and Russia, and we know from what happened in 2014 that Russia is willing to take military action to take pieces of land that they view as important, they view as useful, they view as helpful to them economically and geopolitically. And it doesn't really matter what the people of that local area think or what's best for them or any kind of laws about sovereignty or anything. So Russia, I think, you know, there's definitely consideration there, but there is the chance that this is an elaborate sort of bluff. But if Russia do invade, what should NATO do? What should the UK do? I think that the UK, first off, we've all got to be very careful, because whenever military action is taken by the likes of the United States or the United Kingdom or, you know, any powerful country, there's pretty much always ulterior motives that they don't talk about. Right, the war on terror is the most obvious example of that, but it's been the case many, many times before. You know, in the war on terror, obviously there was reasons of natural resources, of getting oil, of, you know, expanding US influence and hegemony. There was, you know, all these various factors that were in place that really were the main reason that, you know, Iraq didn't have anything to do with 9/11. Afghanistan didn't even have very much to do with 9/11. You know, of course, the Taliban had some connection with Al-Qaeda, but, you know, Osama bin Laden was Saudi Arabian, you know, so there's all kinds of reasons that countries go to war, and it's rarely because they actually care about another country, about their sovereignty and about their people's freedoms or human rights or whatever. So bear that in mind, because if the US actually really did care about human rights, they wouldn't be very closely aligned with Saudi Arabia or Israel. Right, these are two countries that commit egregious human rights violations on a daily basis. You know, in Israel it's against the Palestinians, and of course Israelis are often endangered because of Palestinian groups like Hamas, but the Israeli state itself is you know, committing human rights violations against the Palestinians in the West Bank and things. And in Saudi Arabia, it's illegal to be gay. You know, women are second-class, third-class citizens. You know, it's a Wahhabist society. It's a theocracy almost. You know, a sort of theocratic monarchy. You know, very authoritarian, very dangerous. They've killed journalists like Jamal Khashoggi. So the US doesn't really care about stuff like that, right? And it's quite clear that even sovereignty isn't something that they really give a shit about, because they left Afghanistan. They invaded Afghanistan, then they left it, and both times they didn't really seem to be bothered about the fact that the government, which was then claimed to be the legitimate one, was then overthrown. So ideas of sovereignty don't seem to bother the US either. So with that in mind, is it still a good idea for military action to be taken? Because ultimately, in this case, it will be beneficial for the Ukrainian people. You know, it will help maintain their country's freedom. Well, probably. I think whilst Ukraine is certainly not it's by no means a very democratic country. In fact, I think the World Democracy Index rates it as being a hybrid regime now. It's certainly more democratic than Russia, freer than Russia. And Russia also needs to learn the consequences of invading other countries, right? This cannot be a repeat of 2014 with the Crimean War, where Russia essentially just takes a huge chunk of land and there's not all that much done about it. There needs to be military action, but I think there also needs to be economic sanctions, very heavy economic sanctions. And, you know, Russian oligarchs, of course, have a lot of their money situated and invested in all these different places in NATO countries, and so our nations could do something about that if they wanted. And once the oligarchs start to lose out, then Putin starts to lose out, and then he knows that he's in danger, so he'll you know, probably back down. But you know, this is a man who cares about absolutely no one other than himself. So you have to understand that if you are going to fight back, you have to make sure that you're not going to make him a hero in his own country, right? This is, you know, like, you know, President Putin is fighting against the evil American aggressors and the dodgy Ukrainians. You need to make sure that it's as clear as possible that you're on the right side, even though obviously there's not really a good side. There's just a less bad side, as is the case in a lot of wars. But yeah, so this, of course, is we should still be trying more than anything to create peace, lasting peace that ensures the freedom and the sovereignty of Ukraine's people. But it seems more unlikely that Russia won't be bothered with anything like that, no matter how good the proposal is, unless it is so unbelievably beneficial for them that there's no way that NATO would agree to it. So, you know, what are we going to do? I'm really not sure. I think that war would be disastrous. It would be very, very horrifying, the human cost. But perhaps it can't be avoided now. I don't know. I desperately hope that it can be. But if Russia sticks to its ridiculous demands, you know, things like removing NATO's bases from like everywhere in Eastern Europe. I think that's one of the more, you know, stuff like not allowing, you know, kicking out all the Eastern European countries, all the countries that border Russia, from being NATO or NATO aligned. You know, like these things that are really quite unfair to suggest, right? I think that it's likely to descend into something really, really horrible. But anyway, I'm interested in your thoughts. Tell me what you think. I'll be really interested to hear, you know, if you think that this is inevitable, or if really it's just if it's just the US and the UK trying to make something out of very little. I don't know. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Leave them in the comments below. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.